Welcome, everybody, to Homeschool Connect Expo. It is Friday, July 23rd. We are almost done with July. I can't not believe that. The 2021 is flying by. But thank you for everybody coming out to our online learning fair that we are having all month of July. Thank you for being a part of it and all your questions and letting people know we're getting some record numbers coming in because everybody's like kind of rushed now with the new things that are coming out this fall. A lot of you are going from emergency schooling to true homeschooling, and that is way different. And we're going to be welcoming you with open arms because there's so much difference out there, so many different things. And so we do this to highlight some of our exhibitors that we have during this time period of the fair, and then of course of the rest of the time that we are live. So if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, the all the links are down below to the exhibitor booth, to the fair itself, and more information about what's happening, what's going on in the homeschool world. But definitely dive in deep, and we've got a great speaker with us today that we'll bring on here pretty soon. But if you're watching anywhere, if you're watching live, jump on, ask the question. If you have any questions during the time, it comes to me, and then after she is done, we'll kind of do a Q&A. So that way all your questions are going to be answered right here, right now, and everything else. And if not, if you're watching this after the fact, then jump on those links, go into the exhibitor booth, jump out to the website, a ton of information. So let's bring on Kim. Kim Wright, she is with Logic of English, and let's bring her on so we get to know a little bit more about her and about the company. So welcome, Kim. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you and to be able to connect with homeschoolers. This community is very close to my heart because I have homeschooled 3 kids who are all successful, great adults. They're in college right now and just have come back to tell me how much of a benefit it was for us to homeschool them. So thank you so much.
I had no problem, and I hear that all the time. My biggest fear going into this, because I didn't even really know about homeschooling, when we kind of started and everything else. But everybody was worried, you're going to ruin your kids, or are you going to ruin your kids? And I'm like, I'm now on the back end the same way. 3 kids, all homeschooled, all found homeschooled spouses. They're all successful adults. They're the colleges loved them, their work loved them, or loves them. So I think that the homeschool is such an advantage now. I mean, what we're seeing in the workforce and everything else, it's a huge advantage right now to be homeschooled and learn differently and learn to really the love of learning, and instead of just memorizing a couple things that you may never use ever after that point in time period. So, and that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit of the Logic of English. Can you let us know a little bit more about the company?
Yes, so Logic of English is a company. The company is based out of Minnesota. It was created by Denise Hyde, who saw a need for curriculum for kids who at first were struggling learners. And so that was the initial essentials that was created. There was a target for those kids who were struggling. The predominant way to teach reading for the past 30, 40 years has been based on a philosophy that is not based on science. It's that kids, we thought for a long time kids could just be surrounded by books and that they would learn how to read. And so what Denise wanted to do is to be able to bring the spelling rules and the phonograms to parents so that parents could be empowered to teach their kids how to read and spell. And so we have curriculum for young students who are brand new beginning readers. And then we have another curriculum line that's great for kids who are in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. Maybe they didn't have a phonics background. Maybe you've pulled them out of school and you realized, oops, my kids learned a lot of sight words, but they were doing guided books where there was a pattern, but they never actually learned how to decode English. It's a great segue into teaching those skills using the Essentials curriculum. We also have tools for intervention. If you have older kids that struggle with dyslexia and they need help with learning how to read, we have great tools for those as well. And my favorite thing about our company that I get to be a part of is our customer support. And so if you have questions, we love to work with homeschoolers to help answer those questions.
Okay, that's great. I love when someone sees a need and then adds the science behind something. I mean,
Yes.
and there is that science of learning. It's not just and reading and English. English
Yes.
is hard. But there's a
Yes.
science behind it. I love that she was able to put something together with that. So awesome! I can't wait
Yes.
to learn more. Now you have a presentation.
I do have a presentation, and I hope to be able to share some things that our listeners today can take home with them to revolutionize how they're going to teach reading tomorrow morning or Monday morning. When you start up school, you have some more tools to help you be better at teaching reading and spelling.
Love it, love it. All right, I stuck it up on the screen, so we are on there. So, floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about this science since we've been talking about that a little bit. In 1997, their Congress appointed the National Reading Panel to start reviewing reading research and determine what were the most effective methods for teaching. The way to teach reading is the most researched thing of all times. There are tons and tons of studies about what are the best practices for teaching reading. And you can see here that this National Reading Panel reviewed over 100,000 studies. And in 2000, the National Reading Panel submitted their final report. And with this, before we start talking more about the science of reading, one of the things that I like to do with parents is I like for us to think back about how we learn to read. And I say that because sometimes for some of us, it was really, really easy for us to learn how to read. And we don't know, it might have been a natural way. Your parents were reading to you and you just picked it up naturally. Others, it might have been a struggle for you. In my case, I did very, very well because in the 1970s, there was a very structured way of teaching reading. And that was a great benefit to me. But this is something important to think about because if we have kids who are struggling readers, sometimes it's hard for parents to be able to relate with them about reading and how to teach it. So this was the predominant method that's been around for about 40 years. And that was, we were just going to surround kids with books and naturally they would learn how to read. This is when I was going to school to learn how to be a reading teacher. Back in the 90s, I was taught that the way that we're going to teach reading is by sharing lots of books with our children. Some of us may have this method that we use. I know they were always enticing. I would go to the grocery store or to Walmart, and there would be a pack of these sight word cards. And I was going to get on board with teaching my kids how to read by us starting to work on sight words. That was the way that we were going to learn how to read. But I want you to look at the faces on these two people. Do they look like they are interested in what they're doing? You see, we're just going to put that card up and somehow magically this child is going to know that this word is the word have. But wait a minute, we taught this rule that when there's a silent final E at the end of the word, it makes the vowel say its long sound. So why in the world is in the word have? It's saying ah. That's not what I've been taught. And so we'll talk about that spelling rule a little bit more in a little bit. One of the things that is another thing that I do, I went to the teacher store or to the homeschool store and I bought a poster and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to teach reading with phonics. This is the way that we're going to do it. And this poster, it was beautiful. I even laminated it. I hung it up in our kitchen because, I'm going to surround my kids with print because we're going to learn how to read. And if you look at this, it's really interesting because on this chart, that first letter, it's only showing one sound, apple. And then even with C, We have the word carrot, but what about the C in circus and scent? And so, sometimes our phonics programs are not teaching a full phonics course. What about the word father? There's not many phonics programs out there that will teach that A has a third sound ah, like in father. So one of the things that the National Reading Panel decided upon with reviewing again all of that research is that there are five different pillars of learning how to read. And each of them are dependent. We can be working on one that is higher while working on one that is lower, but they are dependent on each other. And we cannot get to reading comprehension until we've gone through phonemic awareness and learned phonics and have become fluent in those areas. So when we're thinking about these little pillars, Logic of English likes to think about these as bricks. And so our first brick is going to be that phonemic awareness. And we'll talk a lot about phonemic awareness because I think this is one area that parents don't always understand. We like to rush into, teaching the letters and the sounds, but there's a step that comes before our phonics step. Phonemic awareness is the understanding that words are comprised of individual sounds. This first stage we have is phonemic awareness. We want our kids to become aware and become fluent in phonemic awareness. And what I mean by this, I want them to be able to blend and segment words. They're going to blend and segment phonemes. They're going to blend together the sounds for decoding for reading. So, for example, if I said k, at, I want them to be able to blend that together and say cat. But if I want them to spell the word dog, I want them to be able to segment the sounds from the word dog, d, a, g. Being able to hear things like there's a b at the beginning of the word bat. I hear a t at the end of bat. I can change the a in bat to it, and I have the word bit. These are all very foundational skills for learning how to read, and we want to become fluent in those. Fluency is the mastery of skills of phonemic awareness to the point of automaticity. So they're doing this without having to think about. It's almost like a game a lot of times because not only do we want to use tools that are the science of reading at Logic of English, we want them to be joyful and fun. And that's actually our little, our slogan is that it's the joy of learning. It's the science of reading with the joy of learning. And so we're not flashing those flashcards to them. We are playing these fun games and doing lots of language-based activities. And through all of this, we want the skills of phonemic awareness to be mastered to the point of automaticity. The next stage of learning how to read is our systematic phonics. This is where we are learning the sounds, that letters make. We are learning the different phonograms, what they look like. Our brain is connecting that there is a sound that matches each of the phonograms. And so we put those together to be able to read words. Systematic phonics is an accurate written code which translates sounds into a visual image. And one of these words I want us to pay attention to is the word accurate, because sometimes we can get phonics programs that aren't very well developed. They teach a few rules here and there, like I showed you earlier with have. We're teaching the silent final E. Isn't that phonics? But we're not teaching all of the reasons for silent final E. So we want an accurate written code, and we want to teach all of the different phonograms and spelling rules to help our kids be able to read and spell. What comes after systematic phonics? Well, it's going to be that next layer, that next brick. We like to think that it's kind of the glue between the bricks, or the cement that cements all of those bricks together. And that's going to be fluency again. We want our kids to be fluent in phonics. Fluency, again, is going to be the mastery of the skills of systematic phonics to the point of automaticity. So they're not struggling with reading that word. We've moved from going at to cat, there's that automaticity that they're recommending. Our kids aren't being robot readers. They're reading with lots of intonation. They understand how punctuation works and that they need to pause at the end of a comma. Those are all of the skills that go into making sure that phonics is to the point of automaticity. The next brick is going to be vocabulary development. Vocabulary development is learning the meanings of new words and morphemes through direct and indirect instruction and developing tools to discover the meaning of an unknown word. And so with this vocabulary, even if you have kids who are older, struggling readers, you can still be working on these different bricks. You can still be doing things like having them listen to books on audio, reading to your kids. When you're going to the museum or the zoo together or the park together, you're talking about the things that are in your world. You're building language skills. And along with that, you're building vocabulary, which is so important for learning how to read and to being able to read more complex text. And again, after that, we're going to have comprehension skills. It is a combination of all of these things, having great vocabulary, and that helps us to develop comprehension skills. And we want the comprehension skills are the strategies a reader may employ to better comprehend a text. This is something that we don't think a lot about, is that we really have developed as we've grown up and become better readers, that we have done things to help us comprehend better as we're reading. One of my favorite ways to help with comprehension or to practice this skill is to use oral narration. If your child is reading a book with you, then you can have them tell you back what they're reading. If they've listened to an audiobook or they're reading on their own, these are natural things that can happen in everyday conversation where you can be working on comprehension skills. If you watch a family movie together, if they go out on a special day with their dad, them telling you and sequencing what they've done during the day, all of these types of activities where they're this natural everyday life living together builds up comprehension skills. And I love this part of our bricks because all of these foundations are how our children are going to be studying. They need all of these skills for studying later on. And I want to encourage you that it's not too late. It's not too late to work on phonemic awareness or systematic phonics. It's not too late. If you have an older student that needs to work on these skills so that they're able to read books about things that they love. That is our whole goal with having a strong reading program, is we want them to get to the point that they are comprehending and they're able to have this lifestyle of learning and be able to study things that they love. So when we're talking about reading, one of the things that we like to do is we like to show this picture of a tree. And you can see at the top of the tree, there's all of these books, and that's where we want our kids to get. We want them to be reading books to develop that love of learning. But we have these roots that we need to grow before we get to the point that they are reading so well. And oftentimes here, this is going to be our foundation, especially for our kids who are beginning to read. This is important for those kids who are struggling, if they're older and struggling. One of the things that I get a lot of calls from parents or messages about is that they have this youngster 2-3 years old and they're ready to start jumping into phonics with them. Let me buy a curriculum and I'm going to teach them how to read. But I cannot emphasize more the importance of talking with your kids, developing great oral comprehension skills. The language that we're talking with our kids and our young babies is paramount to helping them learn how to read. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit some more. Phonemic awareness skills are going to be part of this foundation. Phonics is going to be part of this foundation. And one of the things with this visual I want you to see is that trees, we only see what's on top of the ground. We see, this child who is older and reading and loves books, but we don't think about often the foundation and that all of those roots need to be nice and strong. If they're not strong, then we have a tree that's going to fall over, or we have kids who may be older and guessing at words, or they're not really understanding what they're reading, or they can't read more complex texts. So we want to spend lots of time developing those foundational skills for learning how to read. And so here's another thing that we can look at. We like to think about that fluency is the part of the trunk of the tree, but underneath it, they're the phonemic awareness, the spelling rules, learning about Greek and Latin bases, and building vocabulary. Those are the foundations for reading comprehension. It's the foundation for the love of reading. I know in my story, I have my oldest daughter was a struggling reader, and that's actually how I got to be affiliated at first with Logic of English. I used the first edition of Essentials with her, and it took us some time. She was an older struggling reader, and I didn't have the tools before then to be able to help her. And my heart was, I wanted her to learn how to love to read. And she would tell people, I just want to be able to learn how to read so I can read the Bible. It was just that was our goal. But you can see if we just skip to the top of the tree, we're missing out on the skills that she needed to be a good reader. If we start working on comprehension skills, which we often see with those little bubble in books that you can find, or we're doing things out of order, like we're working on systematic phonics heavily, and I'm flashing sight word cards at them, but I haven't worked on phonemic awareness, it's going to be toppled. It's going to be inconsistent. Things are not going to be structured for you. And this analogy of it's almost like you're building a house upside down, because you're starting with the top of the tree instead of developing those things in the roots of the tree that we need to develop strong readers. So again, we get to reading and comprehending by developing these skills of phonemic awareness, systematic phonics, vocabulary development, and comprehension skills, and we're making sure that kids are fluent in all of these areas. This is the part that I wanted to show you earlier that I was referring to when I was talking about language. Part of the science of reading references this idea of the simple view of reading. And it is called the simple view of reading, but it really does, and it helps to bring down how we learn how to read, but it has such a strong impact on our kids being able to read and read well. So the first part are our decoding skills. And this is the ability to learn the phonograms and the spelling rules, the ability to sound out words, our phonemic awareness, put them together. It's the actual act of reading, of just decoding words. The second part of this, and I want to point out that this is a multiplication problem. The second part of this is oral language comprehension. And I think sometimes this is really, really forgotten. This oral language comprehension is the other piece to the puzzle. And this is what we're doing from the time that our children are little bitty babies. We're talking to them. We're living life with them. We're limiting the number of screens that we're putting in front of them. I've recently heard that oral language comprehension has become a very huge issue in beginning reading in schools, because speech therapists are having children come into coming into classes, and they have poor language comprehension skills because there's been too much screen time or iPad usage. So making sure that we're limiting that, we're talking to our kids, living life with them, lots of oral language comprehension, and reading to our kids. The reason why I wanted to point out that this is a multiplication problem is that if I give my kids decoding skills, and that's a 100% decoding skills, but oral language comprehension skills are 0 or maybe 50%, then my child's only going to be reading at 0% if oral language comprehension skills are at 0, or at 50% if they're at 50% oral language comprehension. And the same for decoding. We can't just talk to our kids and read them lots of books without giving them the skills for decoding. To get to reading comprehension, we have to have a mixture of decoding skills and oral language comprehension. And so I say this because if there's parents of littles who are watching this video now, please never underestimate the power of talking with your kids, playing games with them, singing songs, talking, doing nursery rhymes, reading books to them, because that is half of learning how to read. Let's go back to talking about phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is the understanding that words are comprised of individual sounds. Again, that's one of that bricks at the bottom. In the word phonemic awareness, we have the word phoneme. And do you see that base in there, phone? And this is vocabulary study for you guys today. Phone comes to us from Greek. We can know that because there's that PH, that Greek f, and phoneme means sound. English has 45 different sounds. Now, there's an issue with this. Can you guess what the issue is if we have 45 phonemes? The issue is that we have 26 letters in the alphabet. And so this causes a problem because we don't have that one-to-one correspondence. You know, kids who grow up in Romania can be reading at a college level within 3 months of instruction. But in English, because we have a complex code, it does take some time to develop this. Again, phonemic awareness is talking about the sounds, breaking down the sounds of our language. So one of the things we can do is we can feel how a sound is formed in our mouth. So something that I like to do with the students that I work with now is we talk a lot about the different sounds and how we form them. So if we make the p, p, p sound, notice how I'm not saying pa, I'm saying p. It's because our consonants are blocked by our teeth, tongue, or lips. And so now let's go ahead now and let's make the b sound. B, b. And if you feel here, tell me the difference. Feel your vocal box and tell me the difference between p and b. Do you feel that vocal box going on? These two sounds are formed at the front of our mouth and with our lips. And we would say that these are sounds that are, they're paired because they're formed the same exact way, except that we have to use our voice box to make the b sound. This is a really great thing to look in a mirror to do this so that your kids and you can look and see how the sounds are formed. Another voiced pair would be the sound s and z, s and z. I feel those sounds in my mouth. I form them the exact same way. They are blocked, they're consonants. But if I say s versus z, I have my voice box on. Another thing we can do is we can talk about, I had shared this example earlier, we can blend and segment this sound, d, ah, g, dog, and blend that together. All words are made of sounds. This is a b, sh, brush. And that's what we want our students to know. That's our goal of phonemic awareness. We're doing that basis for learning how to read, and we're teaching that all words are made up of sounds. When I have older struggling readers that I'm working with, one of the things that I have learned and we check right away is if they're struggling with reading, the source of the issue may be that they have poor phonemic awareness sounds. And so this understanding that words are comprised of individual sounds is very, very necessary for learning how to read. Here we have fluency with phonemic awareness. We're going to move into systematic phonics. Again, systematic phonics is an accurate written code which translates sounds into a visual image. I would think also like connecting sounds where we're connecting that phoneme to the grapheme, the phonogram. English has over 1 million words. And though we don't use all of these words, I had mentioned earlier that English is a complex code. And so it takes time to develop these skills. And one of the things that I know I was taught to do when I was teaching reading and going to school to be a reading teacher, one of the things that I was taught is that, really we shouldn't teach spelling and phonics anymore because there's too many exceptions in the English language. We've talked about that our alphabet has 26 letters and that it has the 45 sounds. We can see here that 45 sounds is much greater than the 26 letters of the alphabet. So how are we going to fix this? Well, we're going to be teaching phonograms. And earlier we talked about that phone means sound and gram means a picture. And so our phonograms are a picture of a sound. Now, when we're teaching kids how to read, one of the things to think about is that we don't want to focus so much on the letter names. For example, if I'm going to teach my kids that this word is D-O-G, that's really not teaching them how to read because we want to focus in on the sound. So I would teach this word as D-Ha-G. We have phonograms. Sometimes they can be single letters. This is the letter that we would call A-A-Aw. We want to make sure like this is A as an apple. But remember, we have the two other sounds, A and Aw, like in father. Here's one of those voice pairs that we were talking about. Here's the letter S, but it also has a second sound. So let's find out about that. So we have like in sand, sick, list, and hiss. What about in words like is, his, resent, and was? S has two sounds, S and Z. Here's a great one. This is the ch, two-letter ch. We have chin, choice, check, and cheek. But what about the words school, orchid, chemistry, or chasm? Have any of your kids ever wondered why Christmas is spelled with a CH? Well, this goes back to where this sound originated from, and it came to us through Greek. This is one of the reasons why students who are in the spelling bees will ask the origin of words. Again, this is our words that come to us from Greek, and English is made up of several languages have come together to form the English language. So let's look at this one. Chef, shoot, machine, and Chicago. With these, we have the CH that we spell with CH, but it makes the sh sound. Sh. These are all of French origination. And with Chicago, well, why would a city in the United States have a French word to it? Well, the city of Chicago was settled by French fur trappers. The other thing besides phonograms that we're going to look at we're going to look at spelling rules. This is the number one rule that I hear people say whenever I've gone around the country and talked to parents about reading. What rule do you remember from when you were growing up? And that's use I before E, except after C, and in neighbor and way. It's interesting because a lot of people always forget about neighbor and way. They just know I before E, except after C. But guess what? These words are all exceptions to this rule. So we want to make sure that we teach rules that are not going to have so many different exceptions. Here's another very favorite rule of mine, and it's going to go back to that word have. English words do not end in I, U, V, or J. So let's look at these phonograms. This is the phonogram oi, and this is also the phonogram oi. Look at how these phonograms end. One ends with I and one ends with Y. So which one am I going to use for reading and spelling? If I'm going to look at the end of an English word when I'm spelling words, I'm going to use OY for the word boy because English words do not end in I. So what are some more spelling rules that we can think about? Well, let's look at these. Cape, Pete, ripe, and robe. Do you notice how the vowel in the center of all of these words is influenced by the silent final E at the end of the word? And a lot of us know this rule as the E, magic E, silent final E. The E makes the vowel say its long sound. If we teach just that spelling rule for silent final E, we have 50% of exceptions. So here's our word have. All right, you tell me, what do you think? Yes, the reason for the silent final E at the end of have is because the word ends with a V. And this is so much easier to teach these rules, all of the rules, than it is to have that deck of sight words that we're flashing at kids saying, these are the exceptions, because this isn't an exception if we teach this silent final E rule. Here's some more. Have, give, solve, mauve, comprehensive. English words do not end in V. As I've mentioned before, English is a complex code. We have 75 phonograms and 31 spelling rules. These explain 98% of English words. Teaching systematic phonics is teaching an accurate written code which translates sounds into a visual image. English is a morphophonemic language. Morpho, here's another vocabulary lesson for you. Morpho means meaning, and phonemic means sounds. And so we call English a morphophonemic language because it is made up of both sounds and meaning. And our meaning is going to come into our vocabulary our vocabulary brick in our the 5 pillars of learning how to read. Let's look at the word please. Do you see there in the middle that please is that phonogram in the middle is saying E? But what happens when we say the word pleasant? Do you see there how the sound shifts from E to E? One of the rules that I taught to first graders a long time ago was that when 2 vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. And that is a terrible rule to teach because of the number of exceptions. We can see that here with please and pleasant. But we know that if something is pleasant, that means that it is pleasing. So we look at the meaning relationship between these 2 words. Let's look at the word sign. Well, we might think, why in the world is there that silent G in the middle of this word? Why is that silent? What about the word design? Do you hear the I? Oh, listen to this shift. Signal. So that GN in the word sign is pointing to a morphological, a meaning-based relationship because a signal is a type of sign. What about the word signature? When you are writing your signature, you are putting a sign down, you are writing down your name as a sign that you agree to something, to agree to that contract that you might be signing with your signature. There is a morphological reason why the words sign and design have that silent G in there. And we can see that when we look at other words like signal and signature. This is a favorite one. To. And this again is taught as a sight word. But what if we think about this a different way? Let's look at some words. And I'll go ahead and explain the O at the end because I don't think we've talked about that. O actually has 3 sounds. The short sound is ah, the long sound is O, and its broad sound is oo. But now we have that tricky W. So let's think about this a little bit. What about the word twin? Twice, 12, 20, 2, twin, twice, 12, 20, 2. Do you see that relationship between the spelling? Twin means two people. Twice means to do something two times. The number 12 has two in it, and the number 20 has two groups of 10. We think that probably this word over time, the pronunciation shifted, and we probably used to say twu, but the number two is a very old word in English, and pronunciation can shift over time, but that spelling has remained the same. So when we're thinking about English, we have to balance out meaning and sound. So as you're thinking about curriculum and your curriculum choices, you do want to look for curriculum that is based on the science of reading. You want to look for curriculum that is teaching an accurate written code. Make sure that phonemic awareness is included in the curriculum. Make sure, one of the things I hear from a lot of parents is that they want computer-based games, and make sure you research those well, because, not all children are going to learn how to read with a computer-based program. I have found that older struggling readers are really, really, really smart, and they can trick the system when it comes to artificially based computer programs. So that's one thing to think about as you're thinking about different types of reading and spelling programs. Another thing to think about is making life a little bit easier for yourself. Maybe look for a program where you have more integrated subjects. So you're not buying a separate spelling curriculum, a separate reading program, a separate spelling program, that you have things more integrated. And that is what I'm really excited to share, that Logic of English has done the work for you in this way. Our Foundations program is a complete language arts program. It combines all of these pieces. Our Essentials program is a little bit different in that all of these pieces are available, but we have options where you can pick and choose based on the needs of your learner. You may have a high schooler who is getting ready for the SATs, and you want to go and you want to study vocabulary very heavy and just quickly review the phonics and spelling rules, and they're not going to need a decodable reader at that point. And so we have pieces to put together for our Essentials program, but both programs do offer this option of having a complete integrated language arts program. Let's remember these different pillars of learning how to read, the bricks that we've been talking about, that we want to be teaching all of these areas of development because we want to get to the point of reading and comprehending. A little bit about the brain science. Why is it that you want to look at a phonics-based program? What we want to be doing is, and I've mentioned this before, we want our systematic teaching to show that we are attaching the grapheme, the actual letter A, to the phoneme. And if we are teaching a program that does that, the correspondences make it the fastest way to learn how to read. Reading is not a natural process. Reading has just in the past 100 or so years become something that we are expected to do, and it's a value that we have now in our schooling system. But before that, reading was not something that the general population did on an everyday basis. So it does take work to be able to learn how to read. And we know that the way that the brain learns how to read is by sound first. And so now I'm to the end of my presentation, and if there's any questions that come in, I'm happy to take those. I like to show, if you are not ready to jump in and do a full curriculum, we have our book, Uncovering the Logic of English, that's available. There is a free book study on YouTube now. If you want to just start working on phonograms, I highly recommend the basic phonogram flashcards. Our spelling rule and phonogram quick reference, those tools can be used with any reading and spelling program that you're using. We have a fabulous game book to bring the joy of learning into your instruction. The last tool we have is sounding out the sight words. If you visit our YouTube channel, there is a fabulous way, a fabulous presentation that has been done that goes over the spelling and why we don't have to teach by rote memorization, and that is available for free. Logic of English has put on our e-learning channel, elearning.logicofelenglish.com, a free parent training course that was put together specifically for homeschooling parents. It does have parts that are an introduction to our curriculum, but there's also other parts that are just great for giving parents the tools for learning how to teach their children how to read. And so those are things that I highly recommend checking out. And you can visit us at logicofenglish.com to find out more information. And then also be sure to visit that e-learning platform because there's lots and lots of resources available for you. So now I'll go ahead and take any questions from people. Happy to do so.
Yeah, I absolutely loved. I was sitting there just like amazed at all the exceptions because I unfortunately did not learn English very well in through school, and yeah, luckily my wife was very heavy in phonics and everything else, but for me and my brain, I didn't understand it. I was more of the math guy, and I didn't understand, the logic and the exceptions and why, and it just didn't make sense. 2 + 2 is always 4, and that's how my brain worked, and it just didn't. But then what you were talking about the layering of the bricks and the going through and everything else, I'm like, oh, okay. Even now, I'm like, I get that.
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of see that now. And one thing that you said that I didn't even think about is it's really, this whole thought of reading and everything is fairly new to the world when it comes to all of this. And so, and that's why the science is now just kind of catching up to this thought. And I had never even thought about that, but that's totally true. I mean,
Yes.
and especially English, where we just piled all kinds of different languages together on there. I can totally understand when people are like, coming from different lands or learning English. They're like, man, English is really hard.
It is a very, very challenging language. And, there's a lot of thought out there about how we shouldn't be teaching grammar. And grammar, it dictates every language. Grammar dictates how we put words and sentences and thoughts together. And understanding like the grammar system in a lot of the Asian languages, they with pronouns, they don't add S. And so I think it learning how my language works has helped understand other people better and why it's challenging to learn it. It's gonna if your children understand English well, it's gonna help them study other languages as well. So
yeah. I mean, that's one thing I think. Getting rid of grammar. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what some of these people are thinking outside in the school system. Like, I don't know why they're doing some of this stuff. But grammar's so important. I mean, I just saw a song, and this is kind of weird, but but I saw a song, and I'm sitting there singing it, and it was grammatically incorrect. It changed the entire meaning, and this was a Christian song that people were singing at church, and there was one word. I'm like, but they had it after and I'm like, that just totally changed. That's a horrible song. We shouldn't be singing it. I mean, it's not grammatically right. That's really bad.
Yes, and words
goes to the word yet, and I'm like, you put it in the front, okay, that makes sense. But you put it in the back behind everything. That's totally different, and I'm like, I'm not an English pro, but I don't think that's right.
Yes,
but I think when going through and what I love how you put the steps and put everything in as they go on through life and into college, and I think really these types of learning and the science behind everything else, why colleges and the workforce love homeschoolers is because, there's a different way of thinking, and it's the right way of thinking through the steps, because once they have these building blocks, like you're teaching, then you're just building onto everything else, and then everything else goes from there. And then it helps you learn different languages, and it just keeps building on itself. And it makes those connections where, where you just don't get it. I mean, like me, I'm 48 years old, and I still don't get it sometimes, and just going and watching through your stuff, I'm like, oh, that I never even thought about it that way. That makes sense, and luckily my wife taught our kids this part of their curriculum, and everything. But one of the questions we had that come across is just kind of going back and making sure you had different levels of I think you've named them like foundation and everything else. Is that 4 to 7? Is that kind of where you start the process?
Yes. So we would start with our ages 4 to 7. The two main curriculum lines are divided by developmental needs. And so the needs of an ages 4 to 7-year-old are going to be different than an essential student or an older 8 to adult student. And so we would ask them to go ahead and start with our foundations curriculum. And you can see from the foundations curriculum, it's very playful. There's songs in here. There's a lot of movement kind of games. They're jumping around. We do phonemic awareness, and I'll say or clap, app. Lots of fun, interactive, engaging games.
Okay.
To play with foundations and very colorful. Our essentials curriculum is what the developmental age would be ages 8 through adult. And with that, that's going to be, one of these older kids, they're not going to want to have the playful characters and stuff, especially if they're an older struggling reader. Yeah. They're going to feel like that is too babyish. With that said, that ages 7 to 8 range, sometimes second graders, want the older curriculum if they're a more advanced student. Sometimes 8-year-olds are still, it's okay for them to have those playful, colorful characters. And so a lot of it comes down to what works best for your student. And Logic of English is always here to help you make that decision. We have some tools online. You're welcome to email us at support@logicofenglish.com. You're welcome to call our office. One area that I forgot to talk about, and this one may interest you, in fact, is that we also, with the COVID hitting, one of the things that Logic of English started doing was producing e-learning courses. And so now our curriculum essentials is finished now. And so there is a course where the concepts that are taught in our curriculum there are videos to teach the concepts. And so even adult learners, this is typically what I recommend. They can take our essentials 1 to 7 course on their own and learn these things through video-based courses.
Okay.
We say for our younger students that it is a parent-directed program. I had mentioned that let's not put them just in front of the computer and expect it to teach their kids how to read. But it is those e-learning courses are fantastic resources for parents who have said, I wasn't taught phonics this way. And there's interactive activities and our foundations curriculum. These are new courses. They're not all the way complete, but we are quickly moving toward getting them finished. And so that's been a really exciting development at Logic of English.
Okay. All right. Now, the one question I always hate to ask, but it came up, is pricing, because pricing is relative to pretty much everybody, and everybody's different, and the cost and the variables of cost. But the one of it is based off of just how you do the stuff. Is it really, really expensive? That was kind of the thought, because it seems like you put a lot. I mean, there's a lot to this.
Mm-hmm. So what I can tell you is that financially, first of all, a large majority of the people who work at Logic of English were homeschool parents. And so we try to keep cost as low as we can. The curriculum sets are always the most affordable at Logic of English. And so that's where you're going to get most of the bang for your buck. Okay. The other thing for parents to think about is that you're getting an integrated curriculum. So you're not having to go by spelling. You're not having to go by handwriting. It's an all-in-one encompassing program.
Okay.
The other thing with essentials, once you buy, it's available in 4 different books. Once you have all 4 different books, you actually have the resources for up to 3 cycles through Essentials, which would be 3 to 4 years worth of materials.
Oh, wow.
There's a more cost up front with Logic of English because we have, the game cards that you're buying, the game tiles, the flashcards. And so that cost up front is a little bit more. But as you go through the curriculum, it has lower pricing because you're not buying those core materials up front.
Okay.
We do offer a military and first responder discount for those families if that's something that they interest in. One of the things that I really respect about our company that at first I was like, oh, I don't know about this, because we do get a lot of calls about offering discounts and such. First of all, I want you to know that our materials are very high quality. There's a coating on the flashcards and the game cards, so it's not something that you need to go out and laminate, which would increase the cost as well. Our books are lay flat books, so when you open it up, it's not going to have where it's going to be closing all the time, and that's the same for our workbooks as well. I went to a craft store recently. It's a big nationwide craft store, and the whole store was on sale. And I kept thinking, this store is not making money off of me. I'm not getting a deal. They're still making money even though everything is 50% off. And so one of the things a long time ago when Logic of English set up the business, we decided up front that we weren't going to be a company that lives off of the discounts. We decided we wanted to set one fair price and to keep it stable so that whether you buy Logic of English today or at Christmas, it's going to stay a stable price. And that it doesn't mean that you can't order because next week we're going to have a sale or a discount on something.
Yeah.
So that was,
and I think just being built by homeschoolers, they understand. They understand some of the struggles and some of the issues at hand. But I'm looking at these prices, and they're actually really good. I mean, for everything that you get, like you said, the bundles and the sets. You get the biggest bang for your buck. That's really a good price.
Yeah.
So everybody going out, if you're watching this, go out. I'm very shocked. That's a really good price. I mean, that is a really good price, especially for all that you get, the quality you get, and the like you said, it's 2 or 3 years of material on it. That's a really good price for what. And again, it's. This is the foundation and the essentials. I mean, a great name of this stuff. Yeah. But for your kids, I mean, and so this is a really good price. But this is a very much needed part because it is a foundational. It is essential going through, and it does reach into everything that they do. This is nice. I love the online price. The having the essentials online is a really good price as well too. So.
It is, and that course right now, it is at a lower price than it will be later on, because it is in development. But it includes the curriculum to teach at that level as a PDF digital download. So it's not just the videos. There's also interactive activities for practice, but it also includes the curriculum to be able to teach that particular level. So we will be coming out with a student course, a student access course where you can purchase the printed materials and then have the student course with the videos and the interactive activities. Those are due to come out late this year, which will also have a lower price point as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean,
that is a great option right now because those courses are in development, the online courses.
Okay. I mean, that is I mean, then be able to have that PDF download, and if you want to print out, you print out. I mean, that's a good price. I mean, I'm kind of shocked by it actually. With what you're doing and the quality that you have. I mean, I'm really, really shocked, which is awesome, and it just shows your heart, and it shows that you've been there, done that, and you can definitely tell that there's a big difference between companies that are founded by homeschoolers versus just the ones that have started a homeschool line. And nothing bad about those either, but you can tell you can tell the difference. There's no way around it. There's a little bit more heart. There's a little bit more thought when it comes to this, and that's why I love programs and systems that are built because they saw a need and they were in the thick of it, and you can definitely tell the difference. Of those products, because they were right there, trying to teach and doing something, and they just didn't have the material, so they built it,
Yes.
and they did it. So I'm highly impressed, and that's why I love doing these, because there is that sense of, with COVID and going, online conventions, and they're just, sometimes you just can't touch the stuff, and there's, the words and the videos are great, but when you have some interaction and you're able to kind of go through the process a little bit, you get to see it a little bit differently than just some other items. And so I appreciate you guys being involved in Homeschool Connect Expo and being on this online learning, fair that we're highlighting these, and the time that you've been able to take to go through that, this program and this presentation, because I think there's a lot of so many helpful nuggets that the parents can pull from, and hopefully people can jump on, because there are people of all different ages and ranges and kids and everything else looking to homeschool, and they just don't know where to go. They don't know where to turn. And I've been telling them, there's someone out there. There's let the experts help you, guide you through that. That's the beauty of this. And if you do it, the relationship you have with your kids, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And we're definitely getting the blessing and the benefit of it right now with our grandbabies and having those, through that. But thank you for being a part of it. Before we head out, before we end this, is there anything else that you would like to say that we might not cover, that you kind of want to let everybody know before we head out?
I just want to encourage people, if in the homeschooling world, if you do have a struggling learner, if you're like, how am I going to teach reading? I'm so overwhelmed. Please do reach out. This is my favorite part of my job, is to get to visit with homeschoolers. And we love to talk homeschooling. Our department is all about that. We have we have a speech therapist, and people will call in and talk about how to use Logic of English if my child has speech issues. I love to work with parents who have struggling learners, because I had a struggling learner. And so it just is, it makes our day to be able to work with homeschoolers. So we want you to reach out. You're not alone. If you purchase our curriculum, we're happy to help you implement it, happy to help get you started. And so we just want you to be sure to reach out.
Awesome. Well, Kim, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this presentation, let everybody know. And, this has been great. This has been really, really helpful, to let people know what Logic of English is all about, and really taking some of these nuggets. So appreciate it so much. And everybody else, all the links are down below. Click on it, go out to the exhibitor booth. They have a really cool overview video, about this and everything else they have, so you can actually see bits and pieces of the sets that you get. And then also click out to their website. Beautiful website, ton of information, and get involved with the Logic of English. So Kim, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.